Austin, Texas, the kind of March afternoon where the air feels warm but restless, where the wind carries the chatter of children and the hum of traffic, and yet something unseen lingers, as though the day is waiting to shift into something unforgettable. Families crowded the sidewalks near the city park. Ice cream trucks jingled their cheerful tunes. Parents clutched little hands, and bicycles raced along the pavement. To most, it was ordinary. To Sofia Alvarez, it was the fragile rhythm of a life she carried in silence. Sofia, 29, walked the same route every evening after finishing her shift. She worked as a janitor in one of the tallest glass towers downtown, Morgan Tech. Her uniform blouse was neatly tucked into faded jeans, her long brown hair pulled back in a simple braid. She carried a paper bag of groceries pressed to her hip. She often hummed softly when she walked alone, the tune of an old lullaby her grandmother had once sung to her in Mexico, before life had split her family apart. To anyone passing by, she looked ordinary, someone invisible, someone who slipped through the city unnoticed. But Sofia's heart held stories no stranger could see. Nights of exhaustion, days of sacrifice, the quiet courage of someone who worked hard without asking for recognition. She had grown used to moving through the world like a shadow. But that afternoon, the shadow would step into the light in a way she could never have imagined. From across the street came a sharp, panicked voice. "Lucas, no." Sofia's head jerked up. A small boy, no more than 4, had wriggled free from his father's grasp. His blonde hair glowed under the sun as he darted into the street, chasing after a golden retriever that bounded happily ahead. Oblivious to danger, the world seemed to tilt in that instant. Tires roared. A black SUV shot forward, faster than it should have on a busy road. Pedestrians screamed. A horn blared. Sofia didn't think. Her bag tumbled from her arm, groceries spilling onto the pavement, apples rolling into the gutter. Her body surged forward before her mind caught up. She ran straight into the street, the wind whipping her braid behind her, her legs pounding against the asphalt. The SUV's grille grew larger, closer, merciless. For a heartbeat she felt the shadow of death, its heaviness, its inevitability. But she reached him. Her arms swept the boy into her chest. She dropped her weight to the ground, curling her body around him, rolling them both across the rough asphalt. The SUV's tires screeched. Rubber burned against the road. Metal slammed into a light pole with an ear-splitting crash. The world shook. Sparks exploded as the pole cracked, power cutting out on the block. And then, silence. Sofia lay on the pavement, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Her palms were scraped raw, her jeans torn at the knees, blood trickling down her leg. But her arms still cradled the boy. She whispered, breathless, trembling, "It's okay. You're safe now." The boy's wide blue eyes blinked up at her. His chest heaved, but he did not cry. He simply stared at her, as though seeing something no one else could. His small hands clutched her shirt with desperate strength. His lips quivered. And then, softly, he spoke. "Mommy." The word pierced the air like a fragile secret escaping. Sofia froze. Tears stung her eyes unbidden. She brushed a lock of blonde hair from his forehead with her scraped hand. The boy pressed his face into her chest, refusing to let go. Round them, voices swirled. People rushed forward. A man stumbled across the street, his tie askew, his face pale. "Lucas, oh my God, Lucas." His voice cracked as he dropped to his knees beside them. His arms shook as he reached for his son, but the boy clung tighter to Sofia, burying himself deeper in her embrace. The man's eyes darted to her. He was young, maybe early 30s, tall with a sharp suit now wrinkled from panic. His face was stricken with gratitude, confusion, disbelief. He opened his mouth, but no words came. He had just witnessed a stranger shield his child with her own body. Sofia tried to sit up, wincing as pain shot through her leg. The crowd pressed closer. Someone shouted for an ambulance. The SUV driver staggered out, trembling, his face ghostly. But in the middle of the chaos, the boy still clung to Sofia, whispering, "Mommy, don't let go." The man's name was Caleb Morgan. He knew power, wealth, control. His life was built on skyscrapers and contracts. But in that moment, kneeling on the asphalt, watching his son refuse his arms for the embrace of a stranger, He felt powerless. It was as if destiny itself had chosen this woman to stand where his late wife could no longer stand. As sirens approached, Sophia's breathing steadied. She stroked Lucas's hair, her voice calm and low, even though her own body throbbed with pain. "I won't let go. You're safe." When the ambulance doors closed, she sat on the folding bed inside, her knee bandaged, her palm stinging. Lucas sat beside her, refusing to release her hand even as nurses bustled around. His little fingers clutched so tightly that Caleb, sitting across from them, could only watch in silence. And for the first time in years, he felt something stir within him, something he had buried with grief, something dangerous and undeniable, because his son had called a stranger mommy, and deep down, Caleb feared it wasn't a mistake at all. That was only the beginning. The white walls of Austin Memorial Hospital seemed to swallow sound. But in the small emergency ward where Sophia sat, everything felt to loud machines beeping, shoes squeaking, the muffled voices of doctors rushing past. She sat on a folding bed, her hands raw from the scrape of asphalt, her knee bandaged. Yet none of that mattered. What mattered was the little boy beside her. Lucas had not once let go of her hand. His small palm was pressed firmly against hers, as though she were the only thing keeping his world from collapsing. Every so often, a nurse tried to coax him toward his father, who sat stiffly in the corner, his expensive suit jacket draped across his lap, his eyes restless with a storm of emotions. But each time, Lucas only shook his head and pulled Sophia's hand closer to his chest. "I want to stay with Mommy," he whispered, the word trembling but certain. Sophia's heart clenched. She had never been anyone's mother. Life had denied her that chance long ago. And yet here was this boy, who had nearly slipped away forever, clutching her like she was the only safe place left. She stroked his hair gently, whispering, "You're safe now, don't worry." Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. Caleb Morgan hadn't moved in what felt like hours. His world was contracts, investors, schedules, meetings stacked to the hour. But now, sitting across from the woman who had saved his son, he realized he didn't even know how to speak. Gratitude was too small a word. Guilt too heavy, auto-fragile. He had seen many people in his life, powerful men, polished women, but no one had ever looked the way she did at that moment. Bruised, tired, bleeding, yet carrying his son as though he were her own. Finally, when the nurse finished wrapping Sophia's wounds, Caleb cleared his throat. His voice came out hoarse. "Thank you. You saved his life." Sophia looked up, startled. As though she hadn't expected him to speak, she offered a small nod, her voice barely above a whisper. Anyone would have done the same. But Caleb knew that wasn't true. He had seen the way she ran into danger without hesitation, throwing her body in front of a speeding car for a child she didn't know. Most people would have frozen. Most people would have screamed. She hadn't thought, she had simply acted. Lucas tugged at Sophia's sleeve. "Don't go, Mommy." The word cut through Caleb like a blade, sharp and tender at once. He leaned forward, trying to steady his voice. "Lucas, she's not. Let him stay," Sophia interrupted softly, not looking at Caleb. Her eyes were fixed on Lucas, whose lip trembled at the thought of being pulled away. He's still scared. For a moment, silence fell between the three of them. Caleb studied her closely. She wasn't polished, not the kind of woman who belonged in the gleaming boardrooms of Morgan Tech. Yet there was something in her eyes, a calmness, a warmth that reached into the spaces money couldn't fill. He finally spoke again, quieter this time. "Have we met before?" Sophia hesitated, her gaze lowering. "I work at your building, Morgan Tech. I clean the offices in the afternoons." Caleb blinked, confused. He had walked those halls for years, yet he had never seen her. "I've never, you wouldn't," she said, cutting him off gently. "By the time I reached the top floors, you're gone. Most nights the only people left are the lights and the silence." She smiled faintly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "That's when your son finds me." Caleb stiffened. "Lucas," Sophia nodded. "Some evenings, when his nanny fell asleep in the lobby, he'd wander the hallway. He'd talk to me, ask me questions about the stars, about angels." She swallowed hard. her fingers brushing Lucas's hair as though to shield him from his father's reaction. He always asked about his mother. I never wanted to overstep. I just told him she was an angel watching over him. Caleb's chest tightened. He hadn't heard his wife's name spoken in so long, not even by family. He had buried his grief under meetings and deadlines, pushing forward because he didn't know how else to survive. But his son had been carrying questions in silence, and this woman, a stranger, had been the one to answer them. Lucas's voice broke the stillness. She said my mommy would send me another angel. She said I'd know when I found her. Sophia's eyes widened, but she shook her head quickly. I never meant. I was only trying to comfort him. But Caleb was no longer listening to her words. His gaze had softened in a way it hadn't in years. He saw the way his son leaned into her, unafraid, unshaken. He saw the way Sophia, though trembling with pain, held the boy as if he were part of her very soul. Something deep inside him shifted, something he hadn't expected. 3 days after the accident, Caleb's phone call found Sophia at her small apartment, where peeling paint curled on the walls and the hum of traffic drifted in through thin windows. She almost didn't answer. She assumed it was another cleaning shift being offered. But when she lifted the phone to her ear, his voice came through, steady and unfamiliar in her world. "This is Caleb Morgan," he said. "Could you come to Morgan Tech this afternoon?" His tone carried no command, no arrogance, just something softer, something that made Sophia pause before answering. Yes. She hung up the phone, staring at the cracked ceiling of her apartment. Somewhere inside her, the memory of a little boy's voice whispered again, "Mommy." And she wondered not for the first time why fate had chosen her to be in the right place, at the right moment, when everything changed. Sophia walked into her small apartment that evening, closing the door behind her with a soft click. The room was dim, lit only by the fading sunlight that crept through thin curtains. She set her bag down on the cracked wooden floor and sank into the worn armchair by the window. For a moment, she just breathed, letting the world outside hum on without her. But the accident, Lucas's grip, the word mommy reverberated in her mind like a bell she could not silence. Her life had never been gentle. Born into a family that struggled to make ends meet, she learned early that kindness was earned through labor and patience. Her parents had loved her fiercely, but love could not shield her from the hardships of the world. By the time she was 15, she was working part-time in cafes, cleaning offices, delivering groceries, all while keeping her grades intact. Every coin she earned was a small victory, every completed day a testament to her perseverance. Yet there was always a weight, a quiet ache of loneliness that she carried like a shadow. Even now, standing in her modest kitchen, she thought of her younger sister. Sophia had taken her under her wings, guiding her through nights when hunger gnawed at their bellies and the world seemed impossibly vast. That sister had left the city years ago, chasing dreams Sophia never dared to whisper aloud. And so Sophia stayed working, surviving, and living in the background while life passed by others, colorful and bright. When Lucas's tiny hand had found hers in that moment of near disaster, something inside her had woken a dormant tenderness, a protective instinct she had buried under years of hardship. She had never been asked to be anyone's mother, but in that instant, the world had handed her a role she hadn't known she was ready for. And yet, she wondered, could she ever live up to it? Could she keep a child safe in a world that had never been kind to her? Her phone buzzed, pulling her out of the spiral of memories. A message from Caleb. "Please come to the office tomorrow. There's something I want to discuss." She stared at the screen, the words floating in her mind. Something he wanted to discuss. She felt a flicker of unease, tempered by curiosity. Why would the man whose son she had saved now reach out to her directly? That night, sleep was elusive. Sophia lay on her small bed, the thin blanket wrapped around her. Replaying the accident over and over, she could see Lucas's eyes wide with fear and trust and feel the warmth of his tiny hands pressed against hers. Every detail was etched in her mind: the roar of the SUV, the screech of brakes, the sharp scent of asphalt, the moment she rolled to shield him. And always, the word mommy echoed like a heartbeat she hadn't known she was missing. Memories of her own childhood crept into the quiet of her room. Nights when her mother had tucked her in smoothing her hair, whispering promises of a brighter tomorrow, days when her father had encouraged her to stand tall, to believe that her courage could carry her forward. But life had a way of bending those dreams, one by one. The people she loved had left or grown distant, leaving her to navigate the storms alone. And now, as she traced the faint scars on her palms, the memories merged with reality. She had risked her life for a child, not for recognition, not for reward, but because it felt like the only right thing to do. Sophia's mind wandered to Caleb, sitting in the hospital corner, watching her with eyes she couldn't decipher. There had been no judgment in them, no condescension, only awe and something else, something heavier. Perhaps he was seeing not only what she had done, but also who she was. A woman shaped by struggles, quietly resilient, carrying a heart that refused to break despite the weight it bore. The next day, as she walked toward Morgan Tech, Sophia felt a strange mixture of apprehension and determination. The city streets were buzzing with life again, but to her, everything seemed sharper, brighter, almost surreal. The towering glass building rose ahead, a monolith of wealth and power, and yet, it was the same building she had cleaned countless times unnoticed, her presence invisible to most. Today, though, she would step into it differently. Today, she carried the knowledge that she had saved a life, a little boy's life, and perhaps, in some inexplicable way, had touched a family's world forever. When Caleb met her at the entrance, there was a quiet tension in the air. He didn't speak immediately, merely guiding her into a small office on the executive floor. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and fresh flowers, a stark contrast to the grit and smoke of the city streets outside. He gestured for her to sit, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was heavy, weighted with unsaid words, with the gravity of what had happened just days ago. Finally, he broke the quiet. "Sophia, I want you to know that what you did for Lucas, it wasn't just an act of courage. It changed something in him, in me." His voice wavered slightly, as though admitting something long buried. "I've seen many people in my life, but none have shown the kind of strength, the kind of heart, that you did." Sophia felt a flush rise to her cheeks, a mixture of embarrassment and something else, a warmth that surprised her. She looked down, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, and whispered, "I didn't think. I just did what I had to do." Caleb nodded slowly, his eyes holding hers with an intensity she had never felt before. "I want to make sure you understand, you didn't just save a life that day. You've given my son something he's been missing, a sense of safety, of love, even if just for a moment. And that's priceless." Sophia's chest tightened. She had never imagined that her life, her ordinary, invisible life, could have such an impact. And yet, as she looked at him, at the man whose world was so different from hers, she felt a quiet shift within herself. Perhaps courage, perhaps destiny, had brought them together. Perhaps this was the first chapter of something neither of them could have anticipated. And as she left the office later that day, the city buzzing around her, Sophia carried with her a new sense of purpose. She had always survived. She had always endured. But now, she realized, perhaps she could thrive too, not just for herself, but for a little boy who had called her mommy, and for a family who had been waiting for someone like her all along. The following morning, the city seemed to hum with possibility. Though for Sophia, it was different this time. She walked toward Morgan Tech with a careful rhythm, each step echoing with purpose. The streets no longer felt like a maze of ordinary life. They were corridors leading her to a moment that could change everything. She felt a subtle tremor in her chest, a mix of anticipation and fear. She wasn't sure what awaited her inside the glass tower, but something told her that whatever it was, it mattered far more than any cleaning shift or paycheck she had ever received. Caleb met her at the entrance, his usual composed demeanor softened by a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. He didn't offer his usual polite nod or formal greeting. Instead, he gestured toward the elevator with an unspoken invitation to trust. Sophia followed him up 20 floors, the city sprawling below them in a mosaic of movement and life. The sunlight caught the steel and glass of the surrounding skyscrapers, but for Sophia, all that shimmered was the unknown, what she had stepped into. and what it might demand of her. When the doors opened, Caleb led her into a quiet corner office, one filled with light and warmth, a stark contrast to the cool, metallic corridors they had left behind. He motioned for her to sit, but she remained standing, her fingers brushing the strap of her bag as though it offered protection. Caleb hesitated before speaking, choosing his words with care. "Sophia, I've been thinking a lot about what happened, about Lucas," he said, his voice low, deliberate. "You've given him something no one else could, and I need to ask, would you consider spending more time with him?" Sophia froze, caught between disbelief and an unfamiliar stir of hope. Spending time with Luziers? She had saved him once, yes, but stepping into his life every day. The idea was both terrifying and intoxicating. She shook her head gently, unsure of how to answer, unsure if she even had the right to accept such a role. I don't know. "If I can," she said softly, her voice barely above the hum of the air conditioning. "I've never been anyone's mother. I'm not. I'm just me." Caleb's expression softened further, a rare openness crossing his features. "That's exactly why he needs you. You're not trying to be anyone else. You're kind, brave, and you saw him when he needed it most. That matters more than anything else." Sophia felt a lump rise in her throat. She had spent her life being overlooked, undervalued, invisible in a world that demanded constant performance and perfect facadas. And here was someone, a man with every resource at his disposal, telling her that what she had done, who she was, mattered, that it had weight, that it had significance. She nodded slowly, not fully understanding why she was agreeing, but knowing in her heart that this was a step she couldn't ignore. "I'll try," she whispered. For him, Caleb allowed a small smile to cross his face, relief mingling with something warmer and unspoken gratitude he couldn't yet name. He handed her a small stack of documents, explaining that they were for Lucas' permissions, schedules, notes on his routines. She took them carefully, feeling the heft of responsibility settle on her shoulders. It was a weight she hadn't known she would bear, and yet, strangely, it felt like a calling. The first afternoon with Lucas was quiet at first. He clung to her hand as they walked through the spacious apartment Caleb had prepared for him after the accident. Toys were neatly ranged, bright colors contrasting against the sleek modern furniture. Lucas's eyes were wide, not with fear, but with wonder, for the first time since the accident. He laughed freely, a sound that filled the rooms and bounced off the walls, warming the space in a way Sophia had not expected. She guided him gently through their small rituals, reading stories, drawing pictures, even preparing a simple snack together. Every action was met with his cautious but growing trust. He didn't call her mommy immediately, but he didn't resist her either. And in the quiet moments, when he rested his head on her shoulder, Sophia felt a fierce protectiveness awaken in her. Over the following days, Caleb observed from a distance, never intruding, always respectful. He watched as Lucas grew more confident, more joyful, and he saw something else. He saw a spark in Sophia that he had never witnessed in his carefully controlled world. She laughed with the boy, guided him patiently, offered comfort when fears rose, and gradually a bond formed, delicate but undeniable, weaving together their lives in ways that neither could have predicted. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, painting the city in shades of gold and amber, Lucas looked up at Sophia with a tentative smile. "Mommy, can you stay tonight?" he asked softly, his voice small but certain. Sophia's heart stuttered. She looked at him, taking in the innocence and trust reflected in his eyes, and in that moment, she understood something profound. Courage wasn't only about stepping into danger, it was also about stepping into love, into responsibility, into a life that could change because of your presence. She nodded, her lips trembling with emotion. "Yes, sweetheart," she said. "I'll stay." That night, as she tucked Lucas into bed, she realized that life had handed her a second chance, not just to save a life, but to embrace one, fully and without reservation. The city outside was still noisy, still unyielding, but within those walls, something rare and fragile was growing, a family formed not by blood, but by courage, trust, and love. Sophia sat in the quiet after Lucas had drifted to sleep, reflecting. on how drastically her life had shifted in a matter of days. She had stepped into a moment of crisis and emerged with a role she had never imagined for herself. And as the night deepened, a sense of determination settled over her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew she could face them, for Lucas, for herself, for a future she hadn't dared to dream but now felt possible. The days that followed were both exhilarating and daunting for Sophia. She moved through Lucas's world carefully, learning the rhythm of his needs, his fears, and his joys. Every morning she woke with a sense of purpose she had never known. Yet every evening carried a quiet exhaustion that reminded her she was still human, still ordinary, still vulnerable. Caleb watched from afar, careful not to overstep. He observed the gentle authority in her voice, the patience in her gestures, the unwavering courage she displayed even in the smallest of tasks. She had not just saved Lucas's life physically. She was saving him emotionally, helping him rebuild trust in the world after trauma. And with every passing day, the bond between them grew stronger, unspoken yet undeniable. Yet the world outside could be harsh, and not everyone understood the unusual arrangement that had quietly taken shape. Some colleagues at Morgan Tech whispered about her presence, curious and suspicious. "Who is that woman, really?" one asked another. Eyeing Sophia as she passed through the hallways, another remarked, "I don't know why Caleb would trust her like that. She's not one of us." Sophia ignored the murmurs. She was not here for approval, nor for accolades. Her focus was Lucas, and that was all that mattered. But Caleb felt the weight of judgment pressing in, a subtle reminder that wealth and influence could never fully shield those he cared for from the scrutiny of the world. He realized then how much courage Sophia possessed, not just in saving Lucas, but in navigating the invisible barriers of class, expectation, and doubt every single day. One afternoon, Lucas fell ill. A fever had crept up during the night, leaving him weak and pale. Sophia stayed by his side, refusing to leave, monitoring every cough, every shiver. She prepared warm drinks, cleaned his small hands, and sang softly to him, humming a tune his mother had once sung. Lucas clung to her, his trust unwavering even as discomfort racked his small body. Caleb entered the room, concern etched on his face, but he didn't rush to take over. He watched as Sophia guided Lucas with tenderness, her hands steady, her voice soothing. He felt a surge of gratitude so intense it made his chest ache. This woman, a stranger who had become essential to their lives, was demonstrating a depth of love and resilience he could never have anticipated. Days turned into weeks, and Lucas's trust in Sophia deepened. He began to speak freely to her, sharing small secrets, little dreams, and fears he had kept tucked away. He confided in her about nights when he felt lonely, about the soft whisper of his late mother's voice he sometimes imagined in the dark. Sophia listened without judgment, offering comfort, understanding, and hope. One evening, as they watched the city lights flicker below from the apartment window, Lucas turned to her with a hesitant question. "Mommy, will you stay with me forever?" Sophia's heart constricted, a mixture of emotion threatening to overwhelm her. She bent down, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "I'll stay with you as long as you need me," she whispered. "Always." Meanwhile, Caleb recognized that the bond they shared was more than temporary. He realized that Sophia had filled a void he hadn't fully acknowledged, one that had been present since the day his wife passed. Lucas had found safety, love, and guidance in Sophia, and Caleb, slowly and quietly, began to accept that she was no longer merely a helper, a caretaker. She was family. But life rarely unfolded without challenges. One day, a sudden business crisis pulled Caleb into the whirlwind of corporate decisions, and he realized how reliant he had become on Sophia. Not only had she become Lucas's anchor, but she had also become the steadying force in their lives, unspoken yet vital. The realization struck him with clarity. Sophia had transformed their world in ways he had never imagined, and losing her now was unthinkable. As Sophia sat by Lucas's side that evening, reading his favorite story aloud, she caught herself smiling, a genuine, unguarded smile. For the first time in years, she felt that her life had meaning beyond survival. Every moment of struggle, every long hour of work, every quiet sacrifice had led her to this place. To this child, and to the family that had become hers through courage, love, and trust. The night deepened, and Lucas drifted into sleep, his hand still clutching hers. Sophia remained beside him, eyes tracing the soft rise and fall of his chest. She understood that this was more than caregiving. This was shaping a life, molding hope where fear had once lived. And in that quiet, she felt a stirring of determination. No matter what obstacles might arise, no matter what doubts or judgments the world might cast their way, she would remain steadfast, a constant presence in their lives. Caleb entered the room quietly, watching Sophia in the soft glow of the bedside lamp. He realized then that courage wasn't always dramatic, explosive, or public. Sometimes it was quiet, sometimes it was consistent, and sometimes it was embodied in someone like Sophia, ordinary by the world's measure, extraordinary by every measure that truly mattered. In that moment, a silent understanding passed between them. Lucas slept peacefully, safe and loved, and the two adults who had been drawn together by fate, by chance, and by courage knew their lives had changed forever. And in the depths of that change, they glimpsed the possibility of a future neither had dared to imagine, a future built on trust, resilience, and unwavering love. The morning sun spilled gold across the city, but inside the Morgan residence, the warmth was not only from light, it was from the quiet certainty that life had shifted irrevocably. Sophia moved through the apartment with calm confidence now, her days no longer measured by labor or survival, but by love, responsibility, and the subtle joy of watching Lucas grow. The little boy was already up, bouncing in his small pajamas, eyes wide and bright, a grin spreading across his face as he saw her. "Mommy, Mommy," he shouted, rushing to her with unrestrained excitement. Sophia knelt and gathered him into her arms, feeling the familiar weight of his trust, the precious bond that had formed in the wake of fear. Each morning greeted her like this, a reminder that courage had a ripple effect. One act, a simple instinct to protect, had transformed not just a moment, but entire lives. Caleb entered the room, carrying coffee and documents, but his attention was on the two of them. He paused at the doorway, watching Sophia and Lucas. There was a softness in his gaze that had not been there before, a recognition that the woman who had once been a stranger had become the cornerstone of his son's happiness and his own healing. He set the coffee down and approached quietly, careful not to disrupt the intimate scene. Sophia looked up at him and smiled. "Good morning, Mr. Morgan." "Good morning, Sophia," he replied, the words gentle, or should I say, "Good morning, Mommy." He said it lightly, but there was a weight behind it, an acknowledgement that had taken him time to voice aloud. Lucas giggled and clung tighter to Sophia, as if sealing the truth of it in the warmth of their shared embrace. Days passed in a rhythm that felt both new and natural. Sophia guided Lucas through play, learning, and laughter, while Caleb watched, gradually allowing himself to relax in ways he hadn't imagined possible. He began to see her not as an employee or a guest, but as family, someone essential to their lives, someone whose courage had altered the course of their futures. One afternoon, as they walked through the park near their apartment, Lucas ran ahead, then paused and turned, calling back to Sophia, "Mommy, watch me." She smiled, her heart swelling with pride, and watched as he climbed a small set of monkey bars, cheering for him with every successful swing. Caleb followed at a slower pace, noticing the ease and confidence with which Sophia guided the boy. He realized that her bravery had extended far beyond that one critical moment in the street. It was in every patient word, every gentle correction, every quiet affirmation of love. As the weeks continued, Caleb made subtle changes in his life. He reduced hours at the office, delegated responsibilities, and began to focus more on presence rather than perfection. Sophia's influence was subtle but profound, showing him that strength was not only measured in wealth or success, but in kindness, patience, and the ability to nurture. He watched as Lucas's laughter filled the apartment, as his fears faded under Sophia's steady guidance, and he knew that the family they had begun to form was real, lasting, and transformative. One evening, the three of them sat together in the living room. Lucas nestled between them on the couch, drawing pictures with crayons. Sophia glanced at Caleb, noticing the quiet gratitude in his eyes, the respect that had grown into something deeper, something unspoken yet unmistakable. Caleb reached out, placing a hand gently over hers, a gesture that spoke volumes without words. "You've changed our lives, Sophia," he said softly, "not just by saving Lucas, but by staying, by being here completely. I can't imagine what we would have done without you." Sophia felt a lump rise in her throat. She had never expected recognition or reward. Her act had been instinctive, a response to immediate danger. But the words touched her deeply. She squeezed his hand, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I didn't do it for that," she whispered. "I did it because it was right. But I'm glad I stayed." Lucas looked up from his drawings, his small hand reaching out to touch hers. "I'm glad to, Mommy," he said softly, his voice sincere, full of trust and love that only a child could convey so purely. Sophia hugged him tightly, feeling the warmth of his embrace, a living testament to courage, compassion, and the unbreakable bond they now shared. As the sun set over Austin, painting the city in hues of pink and orange, the three of them sat together, a family forged not by circumstance, but by bravery, kindness, and choice. Sophia understood, fully, that the moment she had risked her life in the street had been only the beginning. The true test of courage was in the quiet, steady, everyday acts of love and protection. And in that realization, she felt complete, not because the world had recognized her, but because the hearts of two people she loved so deeply had been touched forever. For Caleb, the presence of Sophia brought a peace he had not known since the loss of his wife. For Lucas, she was no longer just a savior, she was a guide, a protector, and a constant source of love. And for Sophia, life had given her something she had never dared to dream, a place where she belonged, a family she had helped build, and a future illuminated by hope, courage, and unwavering connection. That night, as the city lights flickered below and the soft hum of life continued outside, Sophia sat quietly by Lucas's bed, watching him sleep. Caleb leaned against the doorframe, watching her watch him, and in that moment, all three understood a truth that needed no words. Sometimes, the most profound acts of courage begin with a single, selfless choice, and the ripples of that choice can transform lives in ways that last forever.